And now onto MedLove. The founder, as well as the hostess here, is Surabhi Kanal, who is an out-of-town college student. MedLove is a non-profit organization. Let's meet beautiful Surabhi up close and personal with her guest.
This is MedLove with your monthly talks here on Global Television Network on Fox 5+. Welcome to all of you in the United States and around the world. I'm your hostess, Surabhi Kanal. Now, as MedLove has brought on many guests with stories that hit close to home, today we will be exploring a prevalent issue, unfortunately high in numbers. Domestic violence is an issue often restricted within the walls of a relationship or a household, and it is an issue that is prevalent in many homes, even in the DC suburban area. And in order to bring light on this issue, today on the show we have Ms. Smita Moon, an advocate for women empowerment and a brave survivor for domestic violence. Welcome, Ms. Smita Moon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Surabhi, for having me, and MedLove as well.
Now, before we begin, for our viewers that are not aware, how did you first come across MedLove?
So, interestingly, you and I first crossed paths at the domestic violence event hosted by, I believe it was Women Empowerment Foundation, and I was a speaker there along with some other women, and I remember your friendly face in the audience, and also you were the first person who came up to me afterwards. You gave me a hug, and you were so appreciative for my speaking out.
I remember that day. You were quite inspirational.
Oh, thank you.
So tell us exactly what occurred and the type of situation you had to avoid.
Sure. So everything in its totality leading up to the event itself, the event and then the aftermath is just so expansive. So I'm really only going to be able to share a Cliff Notes version of what happened. But essentially, I was living in Chicago in 2011, and I was introduced to a South Asian attorney via friends. Him and I, we only dated for about 3 months. So it was a very brief dating relationship, super casual. And I remember mid-relationship seeing some behavior that was definitely alarming, but as narcissists, sociopaths, and abusers do, he manipulated me into believing that it was something else than my understanding of it. And then the relationship continued for another month and a half, and at that point it started to truly devolve. Like, he started being jealous of me, laughing at someone else's jokes, or not replying to him in a certain amount of time. So I ended the relationship on March 2nd, 2012, and I'll never forget that night my entire life. And that night I was held hostage, suffocated with a body pillow. And so much happened that night in regards to how I escaped, quote unquote, how I got back to Maryland. But the short of it is that he then began blackmailing me. And when I say blackmail, I don't mean with, inappropriate photos or anything, but you know our community really well. For example, I could be wearing a bikini at the beach with my friends, but in our community that would be considered taboo, right? So it was things like that. He first began blackmailing me because he wanted to manipulate me into certain conditions of continuing the relationship. And then he actually began contacting my family, which again, as a South Asian woman, our family is our everything. We would do anything to protect them, and I hadn't told anyone in my family, and I never had plans on actually telling anyone. So then he began contacting my mom, my dad. Eventually, my brother and I flew to Chicago. From Maryland, we filed an emergency order of protection, which was granted, and I had that order of protection for 7 months as I went to court every 4 to 6 weeks with the same female judge in the first case against him. Upon filing my order of protection, I found out that he had an existing order of protection from another South Asian woman. She, as in contrary to me, was an attorney as well. So spent 7 months in court, $30,000 on just the case itself with 2 different lawyers and a 3-inch binder of evidence. And as you recall, I lost my case. I lost most of my friends, lifelong friends, and I was persecuted by our South Asian community for speaking out about what happened to me, about this matter that is typically, conceived as being something that should be a private matter. And often people think that it was the incident itself, the being held hostage, suffocated, that was the most traumatizing part, when in fact it was the injustice system, what happened with my friends and the community, that was the true trauma.
Right. Now, it's, oh my goodness. Any act of forceful dominance is extremely dangerous. And when an individual is subjected to this danger power dynamic, being in a subordinate power position is just, it's quite impeccable how you got out of that. So what was your family's reaction in facing these post-traumatic symptoms? Like, how did you go through that? What was your...
Honestly, it's something that no one has ever prepared to experience. It's
Right.
not something we unfortunately talk about either. So one, I'm so grateful and blessed that I was born to my family because they were so incredibly supportive. It was something I wished I could have spared myself and them from ever having to live through. But my dad was incredible. He said something to me, for example, Smita, there's nothing anyone could ever share against you that could change our love for you. My brother, he's a partner in an emergency medicine practice. His wife, my sister-in-law, was pregnant with and also had a 1.5-year-old child. He flew to Chicago and was with me for 6 days. It was my mom who was really interesting because my mom is definitely cut from your traditional South Asian fabric where lo kya sochenge, what other people think. So when I told her that I was going to be public about what happened, because this person who did this to me actually had, I believe, 6 to 7 victims before me, and not one of them ever chose.
Came forward,
correct.
right.
And I understand there's so many reasons to that, right, including fear and shame. But I was really compelled. I said, yeah, that made me angry, you know. So when I told my mom that I was going to come forward, she said something to the effect of, Smita, can you wait until you get married? And I said, absolutely not, because this person could do these things, you know, to someone else. So in regards to post-traumatic symptoms, yes, so many. I experienced deep PTSD and depression for nearly 4 years because, again, I just felt I was more traumatized by my friends and my community and losing my case at the end of the day.
Right. And it's those voices that we just really want to encourage here at MedLove, is being dominant with your own voice and coming out and sharing these issues and your experiences regardless, because you don't know the impact you could make on someone else.
Yes.
So thank you, Smita, for being on the show here today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.